The church smelled like old hymns and quiet judgment. Cold October winds swept through the open doors, carrying whispers that wrapped around Eleanor Wade like chains. She stood at the altar in a borrowed wedding dress, 2 sizes too big. Yellow lace hanging loose on her thin arms. Her hands trembled around wilted prairie roses as she counted the floorboards to the exit. 12 steps, only 12. For one desperate moment, she wondered if she could run. But the pews were packed with every soul in Copper Ridge. Some came with pity, most came with judgment. All watched her like a show they had paid to see. Across from her stood Clayton Hartwell, 34, tall and broad-shouldered, the richest rancher in 3 counties. He held his hat in weathered hands, staring straight ahead with a face carved from stone. She had expected cruelty when she first looked at him that morning. Instead, she saw only stillness, like a man hiding storms beneath calm water. The minister droned on with words barely heard. Her father was not in the church. He could not bear to watch what his desperation had forced upon his only daughter. The bank had threatened foreclosure. A stranger named Garrett had offered to pay the debt in full if Eleanor married Clayton Hartwell. Her father had cried when he told her, but he had agreed anyway. No one asked Eleanor what she wanted. When the minister finally spoke her name, her breath caught. "Do you, Eleanor Maywade, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" The whole room leaned forward, hungry for her answer. "I do," she whispered, her voice cracking like thin ice, breaking underweight. The minister turned to Clayton, and everyone expected the usual words. But Clayton spoke differently. "I will, not I do, but I will." A murmur rolled through the church like distant thunder. Anar felt her stomach twist. Clayton kept his eyes forward, refusing to look at her even once, since she had walked that endless aisle. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife." The words fell heavy as the slam of a jail door. Clayton finally turned and offered his arm. She stared at it like it might burn her. This man was now her husband, a stranger who owned her future with a single signature. Her hand hovered in the air before she finally placed it on his sleeve. His grip was careful, not claiming, just steady. They walked down the aisle through a tunnel of staring eyes. Outside, the wind bit cold. Clayton helped her into the wagon with a movement so quiet they felt like apologies. She flinched when his hand brushed her elbow. He noticed and stepped back at once. "Name's Clayton," he said softly as he gathered the res. "Reckon you know that already." She nodded without speaking. "You all right, Miss Wade?" "It's Mrs. Hartwell now," she whispered, the name tasting bitter. Clayton did not answer right away. He clicked to the horses and started driving. "Only if you want it to be," he said at last. The town watched them leave as the wagon rolled toward the foothills, where shadows grew long. At the end of the valley, the Hartwell Ranch rose against the fading light. A big timber house with stone foundations, wide porches, and windows catching the last gold of day. Smoke curled from the chimney, warm and promising, but Eleanor felt no warmth. Clayton helped her down with gentle hands, but she stepped away at once. "I'll show you inside," he said carefully. The front room held a stone fireplace, a handmade rug, and polished furniture. The house smelled of wood, smoke, and coffee. "Kitchen's through there," Clayton said. "Pantry's full. You need anything, Silas goes to town Wednesdays." Upstairs, he led her to a room with a 4-poster bed and a quilt sewn in blue and cream. A washstand waited beside a window looking toward distant mountains. On the inside of the door was a lock, solid brass, gleaming. "Use it if you need to," Clayton said. "I won't knock unless you ask me to, you understand?" "Yes," she managed. "I'll leave you to settle." He walked out and closed the door with a soft click. She locked it at once, then sat on the bed and stared at her shaking hands. Downstairs, Clayton ate alone at a table set with 2 plates. He wrapped warm biscuits in cloth and placed them outside her door without knocking. Morning came gray. Eleanor found the biscuits and ate them alone. They were honest food, warm enough to soften the edge of her fear. Downstairs, she heard voices. "Town's talking, boss," Silas said carefully. "Town can keep talking," Clayton answered firm and cold. "They say you got yourself a pretty bargain." "She's not a bargain," Clayton said, and something in his voice made Eleanor press her palm against the door. "She's my wife." That evening, fresh bread waited in the kitchen, golden crust still crackling. 3 days passed like that. They moved around each other like ghosts, careful never to touch, never to speak more than needed. He never pushed, never asked, never claimed any right. On the fourth morning, something shifted. She walked downstairs and found Clayton at the kitchen table, ledger open, coffee steaming. He looked up, surprised. "Morning," he said. For the first time since the wedding, she sat across from him. Eleanor wrapped her hands around the warm cup he pushed toward her. The air between them felt fragile. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why did you agree to marry me?" Clayton set down his pen, and the house seemed to hold its breath. Clayton set down his pen, and the house seemed to hold its breath. "A man named Garrett came to me 6 weeks ago," he said slowly. "He talked about a marriage contract. Said it would be good for both sides. Said you were 19, from a decent family that had fallen on hard times." Eleanor stared at the table. "You said yes," she asked. "I said I would think on it," Clayton answered. "I am alone here. This house is too big for one man. I thought maybe it was time to have someone else in it. Someone to share the quiet." She lifted her eyes. "You did not know I had no choice." Her voice broke. Clayton's jaw tightened. "No," he said quietly. "I did not know that." The words fell heavy between them. She told him everything then. The drought that ruined their crops 3 years in a row. The bank that circled like a vulture. Her father's debt pressing the breath from their home. Garrett appearing like a devil in a clean coat. Offering escape at a price she never agreed to pay. Her father crying as he spoke, but still agreeing. Clayton listened without interrupting, his face still, his hands folded. When she finished, he let out a slow breath. "I am sorry," he said. "I thought it was mutual, practical. When I saw your face at the altar, I understood. Too late. But I understood." Eleanor studied him, searching for cruelty, for anger. She found neither. "So you married me anyway?" she said. "I did," he replied. "And I meant what I said. I will. I will try every day to make this right. You are my wife, but that does not mean I own you." Something inside her loosened just a little. Before she could speak, a knock sounded at the door. A boy stood outside and handed Clayton an envelope. "From the church," he said. Clayton read it, his jaw hardening. He tossed it straight into the fire. "What was that?" Eleanor asked. "An invitation," he said. "They want to throw a welcome reception for you on Sunday. Do we have to go?" she asked. "We are not going," Clayton said without hesitation. That night, Eleanor left her bedroom door cracked open for the first time. Not wide, just enough for lamplight to spill into the hall. Clayton paused when he saw it, but said nothing. The next morning, fresh bread waited on the table, warm and whole. 2 weeks passed like that. They found a rhythm without planning to. Clayton rose before dawn. Eleanor learned the sound of his boots. She learned to bake bread without burning it. She patched his favorite shirt where the seam had split. They spoke a little more each day. Careful, honest words. One clear morning, Clayton asked if she wanted to learn to ride. Fear tightened her ribs, but she nodded. He brought out a chestnut mare with soft eyes named Clementine. He showed her how to hold the rez, how to sit, how to guide without forcing. His hands brushed hers only when needed. When the mare shifted beneath her, steady and warm, Eleanor laughed. It surprised them both. Clayton smiled, and the smile changed his whole face. On Wednesday, they rode into town for supplies. Copper Ridge watched from windows and doorways. Women whispered behind gloves. Men smirked. Clayton walked beside her like a wall. Inside the general store, Mrs. Hawkins weighed flour without meeting Eleanor's eyes. Outside, a drunk cowboy leaned against a post, grinning. "Well now," he said. "How's married life, Mrs. Hartwell? That old rancher treat you gentle." Shame burned her chest. Before she could speak, Clayton stepped forward, his voice low and calm. "You got something to say? You say it to me?" The grin faded. "Didn't mean nothing," the man muttered. "Then say nothing," Clayton replied. Back at the wagon, Eleanor stared at her hands. "I am sorry," she whispered. "For what?" Clayton asked. "For the gossip. For how they look at you now. They can look all they want," he said. "What matters is you are here. You are safe." She studied him, the scent of his jaw, the way he held the reins steady. "Thank you," she said. That evening she found him in the yard planting bulbs. "What are those?" he asked. "Tulips," she said. "For spring." You think you will still be here come spring, he asked. She looked up. Yes, I think I will. Something quiet passed between them in the golden light. November came sharp and cold. One night, Eleanor woke and saw a lamp glowing on the porch. Clayton stood outside holding a photograph. The next night, she went down and sat beside him. He showed it to her. A woman with kind eyes holding a baby. Mary, he said, my wife and our son Jacob. Fever took them 5 years ago. I am sorry, Eleanor whispered. I am too, he said. Every day he looked at her then. Loving them does not mean I stop living. It does not mean I cannot care for someone else. The cold drove them inside. They sat near the fire, quiet and close. A week later, another invitation came. One Clayton could not burn. The church social. Every woman was expected to attend. Eleanor agreed, tired of hiding. Sunday morning came bright and cold. Clayton waited by the door. You do not have to do this, he said. I know, she answered, but I need to. The church parlor smelled of tea and false smiles. Women gathered in tight circles. Every voice dropped when Eleanor entered. Mrs. Dalton stepped forward, her smile sharp. So tell us, she said, how does it feel to be bought like livestock? Another woman laughed. At least Hartwell paid well. Your father got a good price. Something broke inside Eleanor. Clean and clear. She stood, her chair scraping loud. My father was desperate, she said. Your husbands would have let us starve and called it business. Do not judge me for surviving. Silence fell. Eleanor walked out, head high, tears burning, but not falling. She walked all the way home under the cold sky. Clayton found her on the porch an hour later. She told him everything. He listened, his face still and focused. They will not speak to you like that again, he said. You cannot control them, she replied. No, he said, stepping closer. But I can make sure they hear me louder. Trust me. She met his eyes. Yes, she said. I trust you. That night, sleep would not come. Eleanor sat at the small table in her room, with a packed bag at her feet and a folded letter beside the lamp. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed on her chest. She picked up the letter again and read the words she had written through shaking hands. She was leaving not because of him, but because she did not want to be the reason the town turned against him. Kindness, she had learned, could cut deeper than cruelty. Dawn came pale and cold. She walked into the kitchen with the bag in her hand. Clayton stood by the table, the letter open in his hands. He looked older in the morning light, tired in a way that reached deeper than sleep. You are free to go, he said quietly. You always were. Her eyes filled and the bag slipped from her fingers. Then why does it feel so hard to leave, she asked. Clayton took a step toward her, then stopped, giving her space. Why did you really marry me, she asked. Not the excuse, the truth. He took a long breath. Because when I saw you at that altar, scared and alone, I thought maybe we could both stop being lonely. Maybe we could build something new from broken pieces. I knew it was not fair. I only hoped that one day you might choose to stay. Eleanor felt the choice settle in her chest, heavy and calm all at once. She bent, picked up the bag, carried it back to her room, and unpacked every last thing. When she returned, she placed the crumpled letter in his hands. I choose you, she said. I choose us. Relief crossed his face, quiet and real. Then let me do something for us, he said. You will see on Sunday, she nodded. I trust you. The week passed quickly. Clayton rode into town twice, returned with papers, met with men whose names Eleanor did not know. She asked no questions. Sunday morning arrived bright and sharp. They sat together in the front pew, every eye in Copper Ridge fixed on them. Before the minister could begin, Clayton stood. With your permission, Reverend, I would like to speak. The church went silent. Most of you know how Eleanor came to me, he said. Some of you think I bought her. You are wrong. He held up a paper. What I paid was her father's debt, $800 to save their farm. What I gave Eleanor was a choice. Yesterday, I signed over 200 acres of my ranch to her. Water rights, grazing rights, timber rights. The land is hers alone. Gasps filled the room. She can leave any time she wants, Clayton continued. She can sell it, work it, or burn the deed. She is not my property. She is my partner. I expect her to be treated with respect. He sat and took her hand in front of everyone. Eleanor stood, her knees trembling, her voice steady. I stay because I want to, she said. I was given dignity when I had none. I choose this man. Every day, I choose him. Silence held. Then an old woman rose slowly. I was wrong, she said. About both of you. Others nodded. Some looked ashamed. It did not matter anymore. Outside, sunlight spilled over the steps. You gave me land, Eleanor whispered. I gave you freedom, Clayton replied. She kissed his cheek, and they walked home together. Spring came early. Tulips bloomed bright against the thawing earth. Eleanor planted apple trees that would take years to bear fruit. Clayton watched from the fence. Those will take time, he said. She smiled. Good. I'm not going anywhere. They worked side by side, the fence still standing as a reminder that staying had been her choice. As evening fell, the porch light glowed warm. The door stood open. They stepped inside together, and in the house, where fear once lived, love finally found a
The letter arrived early in the morning, and the moment Samuel Blackwood read it, his whole face changed. He stared at the paper with a smile that looked far too eager, the kind a man wears when he sees a chance to hurt someone without lifting a finger. His wife Martha leaned closer, her eyes shining with curiosity. His daughters, Rebecca and Sarah, waited like wolves, ready to laugh at anything that wasn't about them. Ezra Stone, the richest and most respected mountain man in the region, had written to ask for the hand of one of the Blackwood daughters. People said he owned more land than anyone for many miles, more cattle than he could count, and a name that brought respect wherever he went. Any family would have been honored. Any father would have thanked God. But Ezra had not asked for Rebecca or Sarah. He had asked for Clara. The room went silent for one breath, then exploded in cruel laughter. Rebecca bent over, holding her stomach. Sarah clapped her hands like someone watching a comedy show. Martha bit her lip to keep from laughing too loudly. Clara, they said, the plain daughter, the serious one, the girl who had strong hands from work, who spoke up when something was wrong, who did not fit in the polished world her sisters lived in. She was nothing like them, and the family made sure she never forgot it. But Clara wasn't near them. She was in the back room gently caring for her sick grandmother, wiping her forehead and adjusting her blankets like she did every day. She heard the laughter, but she didn't know yet that she was the reason for it. Inside the sitting room, the plan formed quickly. This is perfect, Samuel said. Ezra Stone thinks he chose himself a quiet bride. Let him see what he really gets. He has no idea who Clara Ara is. Martha added, he'll be stuck with her before he even understands, and she'll be far enough away. Rebecca said smugly that we won't have to deal with her anymore. They thought sending Clara away was the sweetest joke they could ever play. But they didn't know Clara had heard everything. She stood just outside the room, laundry still in her hands, her heart pounding so loud she thought they might hear it. She listened to every cruel word, every laugh, every plan to get rid of her, every lie they were preparing to send to Ezra Stone. His problem, not ours. Burden, mistake, defect. Words she had heard her whole life. But this time they cut deeper. Something inside her cracked. For years she had tried to be a good daughter. For years she had worked the hardest chores, stayed quiet when treated unfairly, cared for her grandmother, and tried to help others in town when she could. But her family never saw any of it. They only saw what they wanted to see. Clara wiped her face, steadied her breath, and stepped away from the wall. Her hands trembled, but her heart felt strangely clear. If this was how her family wanted to let her go, then she would leave. But not as the broken girl they thought she was. She would leave with her head held high. She would leave as herself. That night at dinner, Samuel cleared his throat and spoke as if he were sharing wonderful news. "Clara, you have received a marriage proposal." Her sisters watched her with smirks plastered on their faces. Clara looked up calmly, "And you accepted it." "Of course," Martha said sweetly. "It is a great opportunity for you." "A blessing," Rebecca added. "A miracle, really?" Sarah whispered under her breath. Clara nodded once. "When do I leave?" "Monday," Samuel said. "Your future husband wishes to meet you then." Only 5 days. 5 days until her entire life changed. She finished her meal silently, not arguing, not crying. Her mind was already working, already preparing. Maybe this was the moment she needed. Maybe leaving this house was not punishment, but freedom. And maybe, far away from these walls, someone would finally see her for who she really was. In another valley, Ezra Stone paced his porch, looking out at the wide fields he had built with his own hands. For 10 long years, he had worked from sunrise to sunset, shaping wild land into a thriving homestead. He had everything a man could want: land, reputation, strength, but no one to share it with. And every time he thought about marriage, one memory always returned. The memory of a young woman standing in a marketplace, defending an old man who had been wrongly accused. The way she stood firm, fearless, ready to face anyone who tried to harm the weak. The way she gave away her own money without hesitation. He had never forgotten her. Clara Blackwood. That day, 5 years ago, something had settled in his heart like a seed. Something he could never ignore. So he wrote the letter, not to ask for a beautiful bride, not to ask for someone trained to smile and stay silent, but to ask for the woman who had shown courage when no one else had. The woman who acted from the heart, even when it cost her something. Ezra didn't know her family despised her. He didn't know they planned to send her away as a joke. He only knew she had a fire inside her that he had never seen in anyone else. And he prayed that when she arrived on Monday, she would still be that same woman. Monday was coming fast, and when Clara arrived at Ezra Stone's homestead, both of their lives would change forever, far more than either of them was ready for. Clara reached Ezra Stone's homestead just after noon. The wagon stopped in front of a wide wooden porch, the house standing tall and solid against the open sky. It was the kind of place built by hands that never gave up, the kind of place that held stories in every board and every fence post. But Clara barely noticed the house. She noticed him. Ezra stepped out slowly, wiping his hands on a cloth after finishing some work. He was taller than she remembered, stronger, older too. But the eyes, those steady brown eyes, were exactly the same. The same eyes that had watched her in the market 5 years ago. The same eyes that had seen something in her no one else ever had. He walked toward her with calm steps. "Miss Clara," he said, his voice deep and gentle. "Welcome." Something warm moved through Clara's chest, but she managed a small curtsy. "Thank you, Mr. Ezra." They stood there for a moment, both unsure what to say. It felt strange, meeting someone who had chosen her without even knowing her. Someone who might reject her when he learned the truth. Someone who might be her whole future. Ezra lifted her trunk from the wagon and nodded toward the house. "Come inside. You must be tired from traveling." Inside, Clara felt her nerves tighten. The home was simple but full of quiet warmth. A fire burned in the hearth. Books filled the shelves. The windows let in soft light. Nothing like her family's cold and perfect sitting room. Ezra handed her a cup of warm coffee and sat across from her, leaving space so she wouldn't feel crowded. For a moment, neither spoke. Clara set her cup down and took a steady breath. "Mr. Ezra, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you ask for me specifically? You could have chosen either of my sisters." Ezra held her gaze, and Clara felt the weight of his honesty before he even spoke. "Because I saw you," he said quietly. "5 years ago in the market, her heart stumbled you. You remember that I never forgot." Ezra said, "I saw a young woman stand up for a poor old man when everyone else ignored him. I saw courage. I saw kindness. I saw someone who didn't look away from what was right." Clara blinked hard as her eyes warmed. "No one in my family saw it that way." Ezra leaned forward. "Your family is not the measure of your worth." It was such a simple sentence. Yet it felt like a stone lifting off her heart. Clara swallowed hard and forced herself to keep going. "I need to be honest with you," she said. "My family sent me here because they want to get rid of me. They think I'm a problem, someone who causes trouble because I speak up for others." Ezra didn't flinch. "I suspected they were eager to send you off," he admitted. "But I didn't know why." "Because they don't value who I am," Clara whispered. "They think I ruin things. They think I'm strange or unworthy." Ezra slowly stood and walked to the window. When he turned back, his expression held something strong and steady. "Clara, let me tell you something. People who live without a conscience fear those who have one. People who thrive on dishonesty dislike those who tell the truth. Your family didn't reject you because you were wrong. They rejected you because you were right." Clara felt like the room shifted around her. No one had ever said words like that to her. Not once in her whole life. Ezra returned to sit near her, though not too close. "I did not ask for a silent wife," he said. "I asked for the woman I saw that day. The woman with fire in her heart." Clara looked down at her hands, the hands her mother called, ugly and calloused. Ezra's eyes softened as he followed her gaze. "Those hands show you work," he said gently. "They show strength. They show character." Clara felt something break open inside her. Something she didn't know had been locked away. "Mr. Ezra, you don't know me," she whispered. "That's why I want time," he replied. "A few weeks. No pressure, no rush. We'll learn each other, and then we choose together if we want this marriage." Clara lifted her eyes. "You would give me a choice." "Of course," Ezra said. "You're a human being, Clara. Not a parcel being handed off." Her throat tightened. Her chest ached. No one had ever spoken to her with such respect. After a moment, Clara nodded. "I accept. I'll stay, and we'll learn each other honestly." Quote, Ezra's smile was soft. Real good. That first week changed everything. Ezra showed Clara the fields, the barns, the cattle. She offered ideas he never thought of. He listened. He asked questions. He valued her words in a way no one ever had. "Why aren't the water troughs connected?" she asked one afternoon. "If you link them, they wouldn't run dry so quickly during drought." Ezra stared at her, stunned. "You're right." They worked together, walked together, talked late into the evenings. With every moment, Clara felt her fear fading and something warmer taking its place. One night, while watching the stars, Ezra said quietly, "Clara, I have a confession." Her breath caught. "What is it?" "I never planned to fall for you so quickly," he said, "but I am." Every day Clara's heart jumped. Her hands trembled. "I feel the same," she whispered. "I didn't expect it, but I do." Ezra stepped closer, only an inch. "May I?" Clara nodded. Their kiss was gentle and warm, like two hearts recognizing each other for the first time. When they pulled apart, Ezra rested his forehead against hers. "Clara," he said softly, "I want to marry you. Not because of the arrangement, but because I want you." Quote. Clara felt tears fill her eyes, but they were not sad tears. They were the tears of someone finally seen. "Yes," she whispered, "I choose you, too." What Clara didn't know was that her family was about to learn the truth, and the shock waiting for them would shake their entire world. Clara and Ezra were married on a warm Saturday morning in the small church of Pine Valley. The sky was clear, the bells rang softly, and everyone who truly cared about them filled the wooden pews. Workers from the homestead came with their families. Friends from neighboring ranches hugged Clara like she had always belonged with them. Even people she had once helped in town arrived with small handmade gifts. Her family didn't come. They sent only a cold letter with a short congratulations, and Clara dropped it straight into the fire. She felt nothing, not anger, not sadness, just freedom. Ezra stood at the front of the church, wearing his best coat, his hands shaking slightly. When Clara entered in her simple blue dress, his breath left him. Her hair was braided, her cheeks warm with color, and her eyes shined with something he had waited years to see. Peace. As she walked toward him, Ezra whispered under his breath, "Thank God her family didn't keep her." They exchanged vows that held no lies. Ezra promised to honor her voice, her heart, and her fire. Clara promised to stand by him as his equal, his companion, his truth-teller. Their kiss sealed more than a marriage. It sealed a life built from respect, not control. The celebration went long into the night. Music filled the air. Children ran through the fields. Clara laughed freely, her face glowing in a way she never had before. Ezra kept his hand on her back, unable to stop looking at her, as if making sure she was real. But peace never lasts long before someone tries to disturb it. 3 months later, a familiar carriage appeared on their road. Samuel Blackwood stepped out, looking smaller than Clara remembered. His shoulders sagged. His eyes darted around, taking in the large barns, the new irrigation systems, the healthy cattle, the schoolhouse Clara had helped design for workers, children. Ezra came to stand beside Clara instantly, his hand resting protectively at the small of her back. "Clara," Samuel said, removing his hat, "I need to speak with you." She didn't move. "Say what you came to say." Samuel swallowed hard. "Our family is facing trouble. The magistrate was arrested. Investigations are happening. We may lose everything." Clara stayed silent. Samuel continued, "I hoped maybe you could speak to your husband. Ask him to help us financially, temporarily, until things settle." Clara stared at him for a long moment, stunned not by the request, but by the fact he believed she owed him anything. "You sent me away as a joke," she said quietly. "You wanted me gone. You wanted Ezra to suffer because of me." Samuel looked away. "We misjudged, but you're still our daughter." "No," Clara said. "A daughter is loved, supported, appreciated. I was none of those things to you." Ezra stepped forward then, his voice steady as stone. "Mr. Blackwood, my wife speaks the truth. You didn't send her here out of love. You sent her here because you underestimated her and me." Samuel's jaw tightened. "Are you really going to let her talk to her father like this?" Ezra looked him straight in the eyes. "I married her because she speaks the truth. If you can't stand to hear it, that's not her fault." Samuel tried one last time. "Clara, please." Clara's voice softened, but held still. "I warned you about corruption. You ignored me. I tried to stop the harm. You stopped me. Now the consequences have come, and you want me to save you." Samuel opened his mouth, but no words came. Clara continued, "If I help you now, you'll go right back to the same schemes. I won't support that." Tears of anger filled Samuel's eyes. "You'll regret this." "No," Clara said calmly. "I regret ever believing I needed your approval." Samuel climbed into his carriage, slamming the door. The wheels kicked up dust as he drove away, shrinking into the distance. Ezra wrapped his arm around Clara. "You didn't owe him anything." Clara leaned against him, letting out a breath she had held for years. "Ezra, did I do the right thing?" Ezra kissed her forehead. "You were true to yourself. You were true to yourself. That's always right." That evening, they ate dinner together in the warm, peaceful home they had built. Clara watched Ezra laugh, watched the firelight dance across the walls, and felt something she had never felt in her childhood house: belonging, purpose, love. She thought of her family, their cruelty, their scheming, their pride, and felt no longing to return. They had sent her away thinking she would ruin Ezra's life. Instead, they unknowingly delivered her straight into the arms of a man who treasured her. Ezra reached across the table and took her hand. "You know what? Your family never understood," he said. "What?" "That their ugly daughter was the most beautiful person they ever had, and they were too blind to see it." Clara's eyes warmed. "And what did you see?" Ezra smiled softly. "Everything I ever wanted." Clara felt her heart settle deeply into her chest, steady and full. She wasn't unwanted anymore. She wasn't the family burden anymore. She was Clara Stone, wife, partner, beloved. And she was home. What would you do if the only thing keeping your baby alive was slipping away in your arms? That question haunted Jack Turner every sleepless night since the day his wife Mary died. Dry Willow, Colorado, early spring 1879. The snow still clung stubbornly to the corners of the hills, refusing to melt. The wind tore through the valley, sharp as broken glass, cutting across the Turner Ranch, where fences leaned and cottonwood stood bare. Inside a weather-beaten cabin, the air smelled of smoke and damp wool. Jack sat slouched beside the dying fire, his boots muddy, shirt half-buttoned, and eyes hollow from days without rest. In his arms, his tiny daughter Lily wailed, her small fists trembling, her face red with hunger. "Come on, baby girl, please," he whispered, voice cracking as he tried to feed her again. The bottle shook in his hand. The goat's milk had gone warm over the flames, but Lily turned away, refusing. Milk spilled down her chin and soaked into her blanket. Her cry grew weaker, but more desperate. Jack's shoulders slumped, his body trembling from exhaustion. He hadn't slept a full night since Mary died. She bled out before the midwife could save her, leaving him alone with a child too small to fight the world's cruelty. He buried Mary on a Tuesday. That same day, Lily turned 2 weeks old. Now, 2 months later, the baby was starving. Jack had tried everything: goat's milk, rice water, even sugar water once, though he'd regretted it when Lily screamed harder. He'd walked from one ranch to another, begging for help. "My girl needs milk," he'd said, his voice breaking each time. "Does anyone have a nursing wife?" Most doors closed kindly. Some closed without a word. Now, as the wind clawed at the windows and the fire burned low, Jack felt the weight of helplessness crushing his chest. He stood slowly rocking Lily in his arms, his boots creaking on the wooden floor. He pinned a small piece of paper to the outside of his cabin door. The note, written in uneven letters, read, "If anyone has milk to spare, please help my baby girl." He shut the door against the wind and sank back beside the hearth. Lily's cries had softened into tiny gasps. her strength fading. Jack pressed his lips to her forehead. His rough, calloused hands trembled as he held her close. "I'm trying," he whispered. "I swear I'm trying." The fire popped and hissed, throwing shadows that danced along the walls. The baby whimpered. Jack leaned back, eyes closing just for a second, but her tiny cry jolted him awake again. He had fought wild horses, faced storms that tore barns apart, and buried the only woman he ever loved. But none of that compared to this helplessness, the terror of watching his child slip away while his hands could do nothing. Outside, the rain began, thin at first, then hard, slicing sideways through the cold air. The cabin creaked under the wind's force. Jack paced, clutching Lily close, her breath shallow against his chest. The bottle lay on the floor, rolling slowly back and forth. The fire was fading, too. He had already burned everything he could. Scraps of wood, old furniture, even Mary's rocking chair. The room grew dim and cold. Then came the knock. 3 sharp knocks cutting through the storm. Jack froze. For a second, he thought it was the wind. But it came again. Firm, human. He opened the door, and the cold wind rushed in, carrying the smell of wet earth and pine. A woman stood there. Her blonde hair was plastered to her cheeks, her shawls soaked, boots sunken in mud. She looked pale and worn, but her eyes were steady. "I saw your note," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I've heard her crying at night." Jack blinked, confused, his body too tired to understand Maggie. He said at last, recognizing her from the neighboring homestead down the ridge. She nodded, clutching her shawl tighter. "Let me feed her." "Please." Jack stared, unsure he heard right. Then Maggie spoke again, her voice breaking. "My son passed 6 weeks ago. He was 11 weeks old. I still have milk. I have to do something with it. Please let me help her." For a moment, Jack couldn't speak. His throat burned. Then he stepped aside. Maggie entered, dripping rain onto the floorboards. She set down her satchel and moved closer to the fire, her eyes on the crying baby. Lily's face was red and slick with tears, her breaths shallow. "May I?" Maggie asked quietly. Jack hesitated, then handed over the baby. Maggie sat in the old rocker near the hearth, her movements tender, instinctive. She cradled Lily close, humming softly, and unbuttoned the top of her dress. Jack turned away, staring into the dark window, his jaw tight. Then he heard it, the faint sound of suckling, wet and desperate, followed by the gentlest sigh. Lily's cries stopped. Silence, save for the rain tapping the window panes and the crackle of the fire. Jack's shoulders slumped, his eyes closed. The ache in his chest loosened just a little. Maggie looked down at the baby, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "She's so hungry," she whispered. "She hasn't eaten in almost a day," Jack said hoarsely. Maggie smiled faintly, eyes softening. "She looks strong, like her father." Jack swallowed, voice breaking. "Thank you." Maggie looked up at him, her lips trembling. "I needed this too," she said quietly. "More than you know." By the next morning, Lily's color had returned. The baby slept peacefully against Maggie's chest by the fire. Jack watched from the corner of the room, saying nothing, just listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. The cabin no longer felt haunted by loss. It felt for the first time in months alive. Outside, the snow was melting. The wind had softened, and though neither of them knew what would come next, something had changed in that small cabin at the edge of Dry Willow. A man who had lost everything, and a woman who still carried milk meant for a child gone too soon, had found one another through the same small, fragile miracle of life. The days that followed passed like soft whispers across the valley. The frost still clung to the mornings, but inside the Turner cabin, warmth had returned, not just from the fire, but from the sound of life. Each dawn, Maggie rose before the sun, moving quietly through the dim light, nursing Lily beside the hearth, while Jack chopped wood outside. The baby's tiny breaths filled the silence, and the house that once echoed with grief now hummed with a gentle rhythm of footsteps, crackling fire, and the soft sound of milk and love restoring what was once broken. Jack still didn't quite know how to act around her. He mumbled short thanks, fixed things that didn't need fixing, and kept himself busy from dawn to dusk. He'd patch fences, mend harnesses, or haul water twice when once was enough. But in small ways, his gratitude showed. A clean blanket folded neatly by her cut, a bowl of stew waiting on the table, a mended latch on the window she always struggled to close. Maggie noticed everything, though she never said a word. She could feel the heaviness in him, the guilt of a man who thought he'd failed, and the fear of caring again. She didn't try to fix it. She simply stayed. By the third morning, she'd moved her few things into the small side room, the old tack space that once smelled of rope and saddle oil. Jack had cleared it himself, dusted the floor, and dragged in a cot. When she found it ready, she stood there for a long moment, her hand over her mouth, before whispering, "Thank you," to no one in particular. Every night after Lily slept, they would sit near the fire, Maggie knitting quietly, Jack sipping coffee gone cold. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was full of what neither of them could say, but both could feel. On the fifth night, Maggie broke it. "I held him for 2 days," she said softly, her eyes on the fire. Jack looked up slowly. "My boy," she said, "he died from fever. I didn't know what to do. I just sat there waiting for someone to come." No one did. Not until she paused, her breath trembling. Not until he started to smell. The words broke in the air like glass. Jack didn't speak. He only leaned forward, added another log to the fire, and handed her a cup of coffee. Maggie took it with shaking hands, nodding once. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, she cried quietly while Lily slept, and for the first time since her son's death, the tears felt like a release instead of a punishment. The days stretched into weeks. Maggie cared for Lily as if she'd been born from her own body. Jack worked the land with a strength he didn't realize he still had. Together, they found a quiet balance. Two broken souls mending in the light of a child's laughter. But not everyone saw it that way. When Maggie rode into town one Saturday to buy flour and soap, she could feel the stares before she even reached the mercantile steps. The spring thaw had brought people out, and their whispers, too. "She's living with him, you know. A widow feeding another woman's baby like it's her own. Milk's not the only thing she's offering." The words stung sharper than the wind. No one said them to her face, but they said them loud enough. Maggie kept her chin up, her hands tight around her basket, but when she caught her reflection in the window glass, pale, thin, tired, shame crept up her throat like poison. By the time she returned to the ranch, her arms trembled. She handed Jack the supplies without a word and disappeared into her room. Jack didn't ask. He didn't need to. That night, while hammering a loose board on the porch, he overheard 2 ranch hands riding by from the neighboring fields. "Betty's got her warming his bed, too," one man said. The other laughed. "Wouldn't blame him, but can't see why the kid's sucking." On another man's wife's tit, Jack froze. His jaw clenched, the hammer trembling in his hand. He didn't shout, didn't move, just stood there in the dark until the sound of the horses faded into the night. Then he walked back inside. The cabin felt colder somehow. Maggie sat in the rocker, Lily asleep against her chest. She didn't look up. Her eyes were hollow, her face pale. Jack set the food on the table, waited, then turned and walked back outside. The door shut softly behind him. That night, rain fell again. Thin, cold, steady. Maggie sat in the rocker long after the fire went out, staring into the dying embers. Her body trembled, not from the cold, but from the shame twisting inside her. She looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her arms, and whispered through her tears, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I never did." Quote, and before dawn, while Jack slept in the front room, boots still on and rifle by the door, Maggie wrapped Lily in a quilt, held her close, and slipped into the storm. The path to the barn was dark and slick with mud. The rain soaked her hair, her dress, her bones. Lily cried softly against her chest, and Maggie's heart broke with every sound. "I just wanted to help," she whispered, voice trembling. "That's all. I just wanted to help." Inside the barn, the air was cold and heavy with the smell of old hay. Maggie sank into a corner, clutching Lily tight. Thunder rolled over the hills, and rain hammered the roof. She pressed her lips to the baby's head and whispered, "I love you, baby. I stayed for you. I swear I stayed for you," she cried, until her body shook, until the storm outside became one with the storm in her chest. She didn't see the faint blue light of dawn creeping over the hills. She didn't hear the cabin door slam open or Jack's desperate voice calling her name, "Maggie. Maggie." The storm had swallowed the sound, but Jack didn't stop calling. The storm raged like a wounded animal across the prairie. The wind tore through the trees, and the snow came down thick and hard, erasing the land into a blur of white. Inside the Turner cabin, the cradle sat empty, the blanket gone. Jack woke to silence, the kind that makes a man's blood run cold. "Maggie," he called, voice rough with sleep. No answer. He threw on his coat, grabbed his rifle, and burst through the door into the freezing wind. The world was swallowed by snow, his breath turning to fog before his eyes. He looked toward the barn, then to the south field, nothing but white. Then faintly through the howling air he thought he heard it, a baby's cry carried by the wind. He ran. The snow clawed at his boots, the cold biting through his clothes, but he didn't stop. He stumbled over the fence line and into the yard, calling her name again and again. "Maggie, where are you?" Then he saw it, a flicker of movement by the old lumber shed, the door swinging in the wind. Jack sprinted, his heart pounding, and threw the door open. Inside, the air was cold and still. The smell of hay and rust hung heavy. In the far corner, Maggie sat curled on the floor, holding Lily against her chest. Her hair was wet, her dress soaked through, her lips pale. Lily whimpered weakly in her arms. Maggie rocked her, whispering through her tears. "I thought maybe I shouldn't stay," she said, voice trembling as Jack dropped to his knees beside her. "They're right, Jack. I'm not her mother." Jack didn't speak at first. He took off his coat and wrapped it around both of them, his hands shaking, not from the cold, but from the fear of what he might have lost. "You didn't take her from me," he whispered, voice breaking. "You gave her back to me." Maggie froze, staring at him through tears. Then she broke, collapsing against his shoulder, sobbing into his chest. Jack held her tighter, pulling her close, his body shielding them from the cold. Lily stirred between them, her cries softening. Outside the wind screamed, but inside that shed, warmth grew. From skin, from breath, from the weight of two broken souls clinging to the only thing still pure in their lives. They stayed like that until the storm quieted, until the light of morning crept through the cracks in the boards. By sunrise, the snow had settled, glittering silver under the pale sky. Jack carried Lily in one arm, his coat draped around Maggie's shoulders as they walked back toward the cabin. The air was still calm, as if the storm had washed the world clean. Inside, Jack lit the fire again. Maggie sat by it, cradling Lily, her eyes red but peaceful. She watched Jack move, the way he checked the windows, the way his hands steadied as he poured her a cup of warm milk. When he turned, their eyes met. "You don't ever have to run again," he said quietly. "Not from me." And for the first time, Maggie smiled without hiding it. By the next morning, sunlight spilled through the cabin windows. Maggie woke to the smell of bread baking and the sound of hammering. She wrapped Lily in a blanket and followed the noise to the small room next to Jack's. There, Jack knelt on the floor beside a newly built wooden crib. His sleeves were rolled up, sawdust on his arms. He was carving letters into the headboard. Lily Turner, beneath that smaller letters, read, "Stay." He looked up when he heard her. "I wasn't sure how to ask," he said softly. Maggie's breath caught. On the table beside him lay a folded quilt, a small shelf with wooden toys, and a piece of paper weighted by a smooth stone. She stepped closer and read the note. "Stay!" Not as a helper, as her mother. Her hands trembled. Jack stood, uncertain, his eyes filled with something raw and honest. It wasn't a proposal, not a promise written in gold. It was something deeper, a choice. Maggie looked down at Lily in her arms. The baby's cheeks were full again, her lips soft and pink. "I didn't just save her," Maggie whispered, tears filling her eyes. "She saved me, too." Jack stepped closer. "I never thought I'd have another family," he said quietly. "But I can't imagine this place without you." Maggie smiled. "The kind that comes from deep inside. The kind that heals what once felt unfixable." 3 years later, the ranch had changed. The storms had passed. The land greener, the fences mended. The sign at the front gate read, "Turner and Rowe Ranch." Lily ran across the yard, her laughter ringing like bells. Maggie sat on the porch steps, one hand resting on her round belly. Jack stood beside the barn, carving the last letters into a wooden post. He carried it to the gate and set it in place. Together, they planted a young apple tree beside it, Lily helping with her tiny hands. "What if it doesn't grow?" Lily asked. Jack knelt beside her, brushing her hair back. "Then we try again," he said, "but this one's strong like you." "And Mama," Lily added proudly. Jack looked at Maggie, smiling softly. "She's the strongest of us all." Quote, "The wind carried the scent of spring through the valley. The apple blossoms had not yet bloomed, but they would in time, like their love, rooted in pain, nourished by choice." That night, the family sat on the porch, watching the stars. Lily slept inside, her small arms wrapped around the wooden mare Jack had carved for her. The fire glowed warm through the window. Maggie leaned her head against Jack's shoulder. "You know what I think about sometimes," she whispered. "What?" "How I came here with nothing but milk and grief," she said. Jack kissed her hair. "You gave her more than milk," he said softly. "You gave her a mother." Maggie looked at him, her eyes glistening. "She gave me more than I ever gave her," she said. "She gave me you." They sat in silence, hands entwined, the stars shimmering above them. The wind rustled the new apple tree by the fence. Its roots were deep now, strong and alive, just like their love. "If the tree ever blooms," they had once said, Our love will live with it. And each spring it did. The woman who came with nothing but milk and grief found a home. The man who lost everything found a reason to hope again. And the baby they saved became the bridge between them. Love had returned to Dry Willow, quiet, real, and everlasting.